Sorry, I just slammed my elbow into the edge of my desk. That hurt.
Oh, yowza. And they call it a funny bone, but it's not funny.
It is not funny.
Well, I'm laughing. So I'm gonna get us started, because what I want to do is I've got a little bit of I've got a few slides I want to go through just to kind of frame our conversation. But the majority of the time today is going to be conversation. It's going to be all of us sharing our own respective stories with each other. Okay. So land acknowledgement, we're privileged here in Treaty 7 territories to share these lands and these opportunities with the First Nations. In terms of, I kind of framed this as I started, all of us, I would class us as trusted advisors for our clients. And our goal here is, how do we actually create more value for our clients? And to me, that is an opportunity to be able to grow our businesses. It may not grow our businesses immediately, but I think, when we build opportunities and build solutions for our clients, it pays back in the long run. And that's really what this is intended to do, is to enable all of us, when our clients say, I'm thinking about an exit, to be able to connect with other people who can provide help and support in different areas. Because an exit, a great exit for most business owners, is really a unique opportunity. It's really a trigger point for a business that brings a lot of change, and with that change, you need a lot of expertise and a lot of advice. And so I think that is a huge opportunity for anybody in that kind of trusted advisor ecosystem. Every owner deserves a great exit. They've built a great business. They've put their lives into it. And I really want to help them to get the most from what they've created. And I think every one of us has an opportunity there, in terms of each area of expertise that each one of us has is going to be of value sometime during that process, I can guarantee you. I think one of the biggest challenges, a lot of times, at least in what we see, is so many business owners leave their planning and their preparation for that exit transition in their businesses until the last minute. And so I've got this in here because, if nothing else, if you leave today with a sense of urgency that you can kind of share the data with your clients and just let them know, pushing off and delaying preparing for an exit is really setting yourself up for failure. 1 in 10 small medium businesses sell as planned. This is out of the Exit Planning Institute and BDC. 40% of business owners are going to transition ownership in the next 5 years in Canada. 85 to 90% of their average business owner's net worth is actually in their business. So if the business were to shut down or to disappear, if they can't harvest that wealth, then it can be a traumatic experience. 80% of businesses put up for sale don't sell. A lot of the brokers we talk to get approached continuously. And the majority of them, they turn away and say, you're not ready for sale. You're not sellable. It's quite often a shock, because so many business owners just kind of assume that when they're ready, everything will just happen. And that is something we have to all kind of make them aware is not how the world really works around business exiting. And so, I think the data is out there, and all of us, there's an opportunity, just at least we owe it to them to create a sense of urgency that more time is better and gives them more opportunity to prepare properly and get a great, much higher value when it comes time to be able to get out of their businesses. Okay. So one of the things is, I think there's an opportunity for us, because quite often we're advising business owners, but one of the things we find is really critical is to help business owners understand that, real success in their business is an effort that requires not just one plan, but actually 2 plans. because there's the owner's needs. The owners of the business, I mean, they've got a real personal vested interest and a personal kind of set of goals and objectives in terms of what they want in, from, and out of their businesses. And for there to be a really successful business, the business is a going concern, regardless of the ownership. And so it's critical for them to understand that the business itself needs to have a plan and a transition such that the business is not dependent on ownership to be able to thrive. Because if the business depends on the owners, as we all know, that typically it makes it either unsellable or at a very, very severely discounted price. So when we think about this exit process, it's also important for each one of us, depending on what areas that we specialize in, to be able to provide services. And the services we provide may not be to the owner, they may be to the business. So I think, again, in terms of framing in our discussion, it's important to understand, am I advising the business owner or am I advising the business themselves? And there's opportunities in both. But I think one of the reasons we quite often hear that for business owners that they put it off and don't do anything is quite often they're afraid to kind of let the business know that they're thinking of an exit, because they're afraid it's going to really kind of harm their business. It's going to distract people. It's going to have people thinking about things other than running a great business. It's going to have everyone wondering about their future and how secure is their job and what's going to change. And they're afraid that, word may get out in the marketplace and it may hurt their relationship with clients. It may put them at a disadvantage with competitors, et cetera, et cetera. So it's quite often critical to them to keep what their own thinking and their own goals with respect to their personal interests away from the business, because they're afraid of what potential impact it may have. So if we're going to help them, whether it's the owners themselves or the business, to be able to grow and succeed regardless of them, it's really a team sport and a team effort to ensure a great exit. So here, this is kind of a sample of what we typically see. So really built around the owners themselves, we typically see, like ourselves, Robert and I were exit coaches. There's also accountants who are advising, and the accountants typically work with both them and their business. Lawyers, tax specialists, personal financial planners, estate planners, risk advisors, M&A brokers, investment bankers when they get to the point of preparing for the actual transaction. And then in the business itself, quite often we see quite a variety of business specialist advisors, subject matter experts who kind of help them in terms of growing capacity and skills and capabilities and efficiencies and effectiveness within the companies. So just a sample, people who may work with the company, fractional CFOs, which is kind of a little different than just the accounting advice you normally get. Sales, marketing, HR, IT, IS, operations, customer service. I mean, there's a number of different types of expertise that the company may need in order to be able to set itself up as a growing concern in moving towards a deal. So what I want to do is I kind of want to start to frame this into the discussion we're going to have. And I want to frame it around what we call a business exit life cycle. So the way we framed it is there's different areas where we can create value collectively as a team within this life cycle. And it kind of all pivots around the deal, the transaction. And a lot of the advice and the support that business owners typically look for is really focused around the deal. But I think what's important is for them to realize that once you're into dealing, you're not changing the value of the business. It's pretty much set at that point. The opportunity to create value really happens well before the deal. So for us, when we frame this, we have clients we're working with, 5 years. One client I'm working with right now is 7 years out is when they want to exit, and they want to do a major transformation, and then they want to be set up for a great exit. That's rare that they're that proactive, but the longer they have before a deal to prepare, the more value they can create in anticipation of that deal. So we call this first phase before the deal the maximize value phase. So it really is about creating the greatest value, growing the business to thrive without the owners, and that's going to give them the most options and the maximum extractable value from their business. So time is money in terms of creating value before the deal. Once we get into the deal, then really what we want to do is transact for value. And that means having the people who can support them to get the best sale price in post-tax dollars. And you do this by selecting and acting on the best exit option. So that's in the deal. Again, a different set of expertise, a different process. Once we've kind of placed a buyer, the transaction's gone through, then the third phase for that, really after the deal, is what we call transfer value. So there's a phase where we're transitioning from the seller moving out, the buyer moving in to the business, and there's an opportunity to empower the buyer to unleash what we call transformational growth. So typically people buying a company buy companies because they see great potential value in a business. Most people aren't buying fixer-uppers. Most people are buying businesses that have untapped growth potential that they see themselves as being able to capture and take advantage of. So helping them to be able to realize that is, again, a huge opportunity to create value. For those of us as professional service advisors, there's an opportunity to transfer over and continue to support the business and the new ownership, because we're bringing some continuity to that opportunity. And Harvard says that 70 to 80% of business buyers fail to realize the full value of the business that they've acquired. So there's, again, a huge need to be able to ensure that this is a win-win for both the seller and the buyer, and all of us can play a role in that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use us as an exit coach as an example for where we fit in this timeline and how we create value. And I'm going to give you an example of how we can reach out and need the rest of this network in order to help our clients during this process. Robert, now that I'm going to take a breath, anything from the chat, anything you want to kind of add?
Nope, nothing at this point.
Okay. I'm going to ask everyone two things. We're going to start into you talking in a minute here, but if everyone can actually put their credentials or information into the chat. If you do that, then once we're talking with each other, we'll be able to follow up, we'll be able to connect with each other, that type of thing. You can actually download the material out of the chat for yourselves. And that allows us to kind of take some residual value from this. So please paste in the chat your own contact information, anything about your company, and also if you can put any questions in there as well and flag them so that we don't forget them, but we'll be checking in on that. Okay, let me kind of frame this in terms of, for Robert and myself, we consider ourselves as exit planning and execution business coaches. So we're really there to help, not just in the planning aspect, with the owner's plan, with the business growth transformation plan, but most importantly, it's the execution piece that's really specific for us. So once we start with a company, and ideally the earlier the better. So when I look at this graph, when I look at this graph as an exit coach, the first moment of truth is when we can first start helping a business owner in terms of their preparation and their planning. I've got the arrow pointed at 5 years. Again, my ideal is the longer the better. So if we can start at 5 years out, and for example, a client we're working with right now, we were actually introduced to that client by the accountant, by their accountant, who actually said, well, you guys are, it's a fair ways off, but my recommendation to you is that you start thinking about this sooner rather than later. And they brokered an introduction for us. So in fact, the accountant brought us in at that 5-year out point, and we can start working with the client to be able to prepare their plan, their owner's plan. And most importantly, what they wanted is we're really growing their leadership team and the effectiveness of the business. So our client, in terms of our coaching, is really the business, and creating a high performance, highly effective, cohesive leadership team to take that on and move the business forward. So that's what takes the time within the work that we do. So again, to frame that out, as we start to move that forward, there's actually all sorts of points as we're working with a company to really grow capacity, capability, people, organizational structure, disciplines, processes, systems, markets, target market, all of these different aspects of growing the business. Through that process, there's a whole bunch of specialized business advisory services that we have an opportunity and the client is going to need. They're going to need help around sales processes, sales management systems, customer service, operational excellence. There's all sorts of areas within that process, digital transformation, where there's opportunities to bring other services in, because when we're working with a client on an ongoing continuous basis, we do get those questions all the time, don't we, Robert? Well, we need this. Do you know somebody who can help us with that? And we want to be able to plug those things in. That being said, even the accountant who actually introduced us with this client, for example, as we're getting closer towards the time, there's this kind of witching hour, I think, for a lot of you who are tax specialists know, kind of, you need to be able to verify your qualifications for lifetime capital gains. And that ownership structure and everything else, it has to be well in advance of 24 months. So in fact, we've brought the accountants back in 3 different areas since they introduced us. One area is a digital transformation work, where they're helping around ERP systems. Another area is bringing them in as fractional CFOs. And then another area is then actually putting together and helping on the personal financial stuff as well, with forward-looking forecasts for the business and the individual. So that's just an example where we have an opportunity and need really to be able to pool together and help them build this advisory team that can carry them through to that kind of great transition out of their business. So using us as an example, what I want to do now is I want to kind of start to frame everyone's thinking, because I'm going to start having everyone share. And what I'm looking for is we're going to kind of go around the group. And for every person, what I want to know is, tell us your self-introduction. Tell us your quick elevator pitch. Who are you? What is it you do? And then what I'd like to do is find out, how do you create value for an owner? Or how do you create value for the business? What are the trigger points? When I talk about trigger points, like I said, for us, there's that point sometime between 5 years and 2 years where we get the opportunity to go in and have our first conversations with a business owner. The next trigger point is probably, I would say, 2.5 to 3 years out, because if we're really going to help them, we need probably 2 years to make the major kind of organizational transformations that need to happen within the business. Changing organization, structure, design, skills, etc. takes time. So we need typically at least 2.5 years, because we want to make sure that the tax issues and opportunities have been touched. And that has got to be, like I said, 2.5 years out. So we can't trigger that and make sure that happens if we're not involved before then. So if you use that as an example for the services you do, what are the trigger points where it's really crucial for you to be able to be there to create the value you can create? And then the last question is, what is your key differentiator? If we're going to help each other, then if there's something that differentiates us, that makes us memorable, I want you to be able to share that. So if you, when we come to this, if you can draw a little star where you kind of fit along that life cycle for each one of your trigger points, and you can speak to that, then that would be kind of visually, if you're a visual or kinesthetic person, then that kind of, for me, helps understand. So that was a long-winded setup. What I want to do now is go around the room.
You need to put that graphic back up again, Brad.
Okay. So I'm going to self-introduction. What's your value proposition? Where are your trigger points? What's unique and memorable? So Robert, do you want to select people and we'll just start going around?
Put me in the hot seat. Okay, awesome. Let's start with Brian. Tell us a little bit about you. You knew I was going to pick you, didn't you?
Well, I don't know. It was the last guy that kind of just came screaming in. I had an ultrasound this morning, so that's why I was late. Sorry about that. Anyways, yeah, I'm Brian Manko. I'm a tax accountant. Hi, Vanessa. Haven't seen you for a while. What I do is I do a lot of compilation engagements, which is tax returns and financial reporting as well. Companies in turn use this to borrow. The real value that I provide is one step further, which is in terms of analysis of their business, and they can all use some strategic analysis and some further crunching of the numbers to look at costs. I'm originally a cost accountant, and so what we do is look at processes and look at efficiencies and things like that. And when clients actually engage me to do that, actually a lot of times they just really want me to get their tax done. But what really I can do, that's the value that I can provide. So that's really in a nutshell. Accounting kind of explains itself. We do the tax returns and get everything filed and keep CRA off everybody's back, and that's about it.
Awesome, great, thanks, Brian. Let's
Wait.
into
Robert, Brian, what makes you memorable?
What makes me memorable?
Yeah,
I don't know.
anything.
My brand new short haircut. I don't know. It's a little too short. I don't know. What makes me memorable? I think just the customer service. I mean, a lot of people have gone through the major firms, and they don't really get personalized service there, and they certainly can, but it all depends on the individuals that you're dealing with. And I'm just a very small shop. I deal with companies that are 50,000 to 12 million, and 12 million is the biggest leap. The biggest beyond that is 700,000. So really they get some pretty customized attention, and that's, I think, what makes me memorable.
Would you describe yourselves really as kind of the entrepreneur's accountant? Because there's the big corporate guys who kind of really tend to be very specialized and fall into little niches, but knowing the issues that, like on the tax side, knowing the stuff that an owner entrepreneur needs to consider, that's kind of unique.
Yeah, I thank you for asking that question, because that's one thing I didn't mention. There's a lot of box thinking in there. There's just kind of staying right within the lines, and there we go. I think outside the lines, and I even named my company Open Mind Accounting. You see it on my shirt here. See it as Open Mind Accounting. And the reason I did that is because it's just too easy for accountants to get way too busy, and if the focus is tax and corporate tax filings, then the focus is how do we get this done, and how do we get this off my desk? And for me, when I was an entrepreneur myself, because I am an entrepreneur, the most common answer I got from accountants is no, you can't do that. Whereas with open mind accounting, what I do is I try to understand what people are trying to achieve, and they've heard from their friends, they're writing this off, they've heard from their friends about that strategy. And so I do a little bit more. It's not that I spend that much time, but I try and find the research or the actual solution that they're looking for. And if we can save them $1,000 a year, over 10 years, that's $1,000 for them. So that's that kind of hopefully answers that one, Brad.
Well, what I flagged for myself, just to give you an example, is I love that. That was perfect. So for me, the way I'm going to remember you is I can write you down as Brian, the can-do accountant.
There we go. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, but not can do with the U. That's a nuclear reactor. So
Excellent. Okay. Back to you, Robert.
I'd like to call on Karen. How are you this morning, Karen?
Had to find my unmute button. I'm great. Thank you very much, Robert. I'm Karen Pezderek. I'm a wealth strategist for Mega Living Insurance Strategies, and I work with accountants and other advisors of my clients. I specialize in the high net worth market, using life insurance to mitigate taxes, save them taxes now as well as in the future. I specialize in estate and succession planning and also business insurance. So I probably, my process is starting out just getting to know people, getting to know what's important to them, what their priorities are, what they see as their challenges, and hopefully working with their team to try and come up with some solutions that we can give them some options and show them the outcomes of all those different options and allow them to make some informed decisions around how they want to handle their finances.
Okay.
Awesome. Excellent, Karen.
Karen,
Thank you very
where
much.
are the moments of truth for you?
By that, can you just explain what you mean by that question?
Sure. A moment of truth is there's kind of a point in time where it's really important for them to engage you.
Today. And I'll tell you why.
Yep.
Because people always procrastinate on the things that are most important. And sometimes factors come up that are beyond their control that start to limit their options. And so I think the sooner that people have a conversation around where they are and what's important to them, the sooner they're able to make some really intelligent decisions around that. And just like yourself, the earlier in their business cycle they do that, whether they are at that physical moment or not, it's just about planning. And plans can always change, but definitely having a template to start with allows you to make those adjustments as time goes by. So that's what I would say is the trigger moment for me.
And then what's memorable? What kind of distinguishes you that I can think of in a simple way?
I keep things simple for my clients. It can be a great big mountain that they see that they have to start climbing. And I can be very specific in saying, if you can provide me with this, 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 and this, then I can go to work behind the scenes and I will involve you as much or as little as you want to be involved. And I pride myself on making a complicated, a complicated process as simple as possible for my client.
Okay. So for myself, the flag I wrote in my brain was risk made simple, wealth insured.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay.
Awesome. Excellent. Thanks, Karen. Alvin, tell us a little bit about you.
About me or my business?
Both.
I Nice to see everybody. Brad, good to see you as always. I've turned around 7 distressed companies in 6 different industries, and I'm now in the business of building balance sheets and enterprise value through a partnered mergers and acquisition strategy.
So what makes you special, Alvin?
Because we're non-transactional and more long-term with our partnership with our clients.
Cool. And we obviously know how you add value because you just said you increase value. What are the trigger points? When do you get involved with them?
When they're generating $500,000 in earnings before interest and taxes or more, and they want to grow by mergers and acquisition and scale their industry. The
Excellent.
objective being to create a diversified portfolio of cash generating businesses.
Excellent. Super. Phil, let's have you pipe up here. Oh, you're on mute. Welcome to Zoom.
That's so 2020.
My speaker wasn't on mute, but the software was. How you doing, Robert?
I'm great.
Good. My name's Phil Hammond. I'm an outsourced sales vice president and certified sales coach. My company is called Integrated Sales Execution Group. So basically, I build high-performing sales teams, and I've been doing so for over 25 years. Like I said, I'm a fractional sales vice president, and I support owners predominantly in the SMB space, and I work within B2B businesses to build or reignite their sales engine. My company is called Integrated Sales Execution Group for a reason. I'm not a consultant. I actually go into the business and directly manage or lead the sales team so that the owners can focus on things that really matter or live their best life. In this case, they can prepare for their exit through having a fully vetted and well-performing sales team to be part of the sale of the company. Because as we all know, if you don't have a sales engine that will survive without the owner's involvement, there's not a heck of a lot to sell as it relates to that business. The trigger point for me, besides what I just said about exit planning, is really a company's not growing, or they're stagnant, or they're not growing as fast as they should be when compared to others. They have high turnover in sales. Things just aren't growing from a revenue perspective. And what was the other thing? What is key differentiator so others can remember me? My corporate life was was predominantly in outsourcing. So I consider myself to be rather an expert in the area of outsourcing. So it's somewhat ironic that I've ended up essentially outsourcing myself to companies. And I've worked because of my past in outsourcing, I've worked with every major industry in Canada. So everything from finance, manufacturing, retail, healthcare, legal, SaaS companies, fintech companies, insurance, just about everything. So I'm a fractional sales leader who's got a lot of experience in outsourcing and can work with almost any industry.
Okay, so outsourcing sales leadership.
Yeah, based here in Calgary.
Robert, you're saying?
Excellent. Super duper. No, I was going to say thanks, Phil. That's excellent. Next up, let's have Curtis on the iPhone.
He just wrote he has to step out. Curtis, do you have 2 minutes?
I guess, yep. That's pretty good timing. I was like, I just sent that. Anyway, yes. Curtis Buck, operate a fractional CFO service. I just updated in the chat line my contact data, and that I'd look to the fractional CFO would be my wedge to get in from a marketing standpoint. But what I do after I'm in is that creation of value for the owner by linking their awareness and the alignment between their personal life cycle needs, values, and their personal wealth, and the business as a component of that. And I then generate a trusted advisor relationship and a strategic build that goes beyond one side or the other. And that, I believe, is number 4, which is my high value trigger point in that life cycle, is I put myself as a part of their trusted advisor team for the entire flow through to generate and sustain wealth. Whether you keep the business or not is remove the emotional decision of that and talk and get the business owner on a mindset of wealth. And I think that's leads into number 5, which would be my key differentiator. I'm interested in the owner's wealth. The business is just a means to that end.
Very cool. Any thoughts, Brad?
I'm rating the business is how you
A means to an end.
business is a means to an end.
The owner's actual personal needs and interests.
There you go. Awesome. I'm going to pick on Scott next.
Hello, everybody. My name is Scott Wilson. I am the owner of Greater Vancouver Sales Solutions, powered by Sales Acceleration. Myself and Phil actually are both with Sales Acceleration, although we run our separate LLCs. Sales Acceleration is just our licensee. So same as Phil, as I go in and work as a fractional VP of sales. I've done it for over 30 years in corporate life. And, exactly how Phil pitched it, we go in and we make the difference and get the owner to go be what they need to do and be in that CEO or business owner seat, not just have their eyes focused on the revenue side. One of the kind of work, I mainly work with companies in the $2 to $40 million range. Some of the value that we bring to what Phil said is, we go in and or I go in and I actually roll up my sleeves and do the work. I just don't hand you a nice, pretty report and go, here's what you need to do to fix your sales and your processes, and here's what you're missing. Go in, roll up our sleeves, and we do it. So, and probably one of the big attributes I would say, or things I'm most proud of, is making sure we have the right people in the right seats. And that includes the CEO or the owner to get out of the way and, be able to work on all of his business, not just the revenue side. And, and to the same point, you get businesses where the sales are flat. They don't know why. Sometimes you might even have a successful business and they have no clue why their business is that good and how much better they could be. So, I've helped companies with that as well. And, and one of the other great things I think that I've been very good at in my career, and the reason I got into doing this a couple of years ago is simply is building great leaders, because that's what I really enjoyed in my corporate life. I built a lot of great leaders, and unfortunately I got into that big corporate career and into those rooms where I was making shareholders happy and just being in boardroom meetings all the time. So I just needed that change and whatnot. I had a great, wonderful career, but I really enjoy what I do now. And I'm back to my why and what fills my heart and makes me want to get up in the morning and do what I do. And Sales Acceleration and EPI do have an alliance. So we totally get exit planning and the need for it. And to the point where a business or somebody, where we come in is, that business that, they might be set up their exit planning and they'll go, well, we should be 10x by this point in the date, so people will come in and have myself come in and say, well, is that right? Could it be 15? What is the true value here? And what are the gaps missing to make them get to those goals? So that's where I come in and whatnot. So yeah, other than that, I think I kind of covered everything off and whatnot. So great to be here, and thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Scott.
What makes you memorable other than your good looks?
Just the value I brought to the business and the aha moments from that owner who, you know, the one client I just finished with was a he was the owner, and he was not being the CEO, and he was trying to run too much of just the revenue side, and he was in the mud, and I helped them get out of the mud and get them elevated into that seat they should be at.
I like that. Getting owners out of the mud.
Awesome. I'm going to pick on Nikki next.
Perfect. Thanks, Rob. My name is Nikki Walker. I am a business development consultant with PEO Canada right here in Calgary. And PEO Canada is an employee management platform. We are, where do we fit into this graphic? Whenever a business looks like or feels as though they are looking for support with their payroll, human resources, benefits, workers' compensation, we are an outsourced solution. So we provide support from the outside, freeing up business owners to do what they do best, to run their business and not to be worrying about the administration side. So we can fit into a life cycle of a business at any point. It's completely up to them. Often happens when in times of growth. Can also happen though in times of looking to exit, because having everything in place and making sure your employees are well looked after and the reins can just be handed over can add a great deal of value to any business. What is our key differentiator? Our key differentiator is that we are a team of individuals here at PEO Canada, and the same group of people are always involved with the same account. So it's not a call center, and it's personalized service.
Excellent.
Support.
Thanks, Nikki.
Welcome.
Vanessa.
Hi, and yes, I've known Brian for a long time, and I've met Phil a couple of times as well. So it's good to see a few familiar faces. So I have two accounting practices. One is similar to Brian's in that it's a year-end, do compilation and tax. I do have a tax specialty. I've done the in-depth tax course. And on that public practice side, I would say I'm more of a risk mitigator. I'm mitigating risk of market changes. So when we're structuring a business, many of these serial entrepreneurs will get involved in some real estate business, and they'll get involved in an operating company, and then they'll decide they're going to do another operating company, and they might want to cross-fund things, and the structuring of that has to be very done well, or you may run into cross guarantees with banks. You might run into one company has loaned a bunch of money to another company that can't repay it, and because it didn't have interest charged, there's nothing that company can do. They can't even write it off as a capital. So I'm mitigating tax risk and market risk by the structuring. Where I like to come into that process is when people are going into that new business opportunity or looking to invest in real estate, so that we can structure it in ways that the cross guarantees don't apply, etc. And in that tax risk mitigation, that's a long-term play to ensure that we don't have 20 years of bad deductions inside a company that somebody doesn't want to buy. There's some companies that I've seen that there's no way you'd buy the shares just because of what's been going on internally in that. Part of that risk mitigation is also unanimous shareholders agreements, even with family members. Highly recommended to have that at the beginning, and so I'll work with the lawyer, and what that discussion does is it sets people up for that long-term view of the business and how that, yeah, I'm going to be doing this business for a little while, but the long run is I want to grow a legacy business, and I see the opportunity to start to have that discussion and then start to bring in other collaborative professionals to fill in the gaps for some of the pieces that maybe they need advising at that point. So that's the tax and compilation practice, but I also have a fractional CFO or fractional controllership business where I will come in various different ways. I might just be there for 6 months to consult with the business owner, and maybe the wife is the bookkeeper. I've seen that happen with $15 million a year annual revenue operations where that's the setup. And I provide that financial expertise, and that business allows me to come in and be on their team. I can clean up processes. I can help with some of the contractual advising that's in-house. I'll do 3-month contracts. I'll do a 1-year contract. It all depends on the business owner's needs. They might need me in for sort of the strategy and how do I get my accounting system to get the information out that aligns with that strategy. All these types of questions that may come in. In terms of what makes me memorable or some key differentiator, I see myself as a decision support specialist. I'll run scenario analysis. I want to be brought in at that time before transactions have occurred, before before they've gone too far down the line of bringing their buddy in as a shareholder. So that I can provide all the options and analysis beforehand. Very details orientated, and I'm definitely more on the risk mitigation side.
Where were you in my last business, Vanessa?
Now you got me.
There we go. Thank you for that. Risk mitigation specialist and person to keep you out of the traps. Trips and tricks, right? Awesome. Ellen, sorry to keep you last, but you're up.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you. I am a certified financial planner, and I own and operate Elevate Financial Strategies out of Cochrane, actually. And I started in the group benefits side, so I was mainly advising small companies on benefits. So I do similar work to Karen, but I do it in a much different market. So most of my companies are small, maybe they're under 10 employees. They are practical, they're functional, they don't have good processes. Their owners are really good at the thing that they do, but not necessarily running the business. And I sort of stumbled into that work because that was my target market, and that's who I ended up working with most of the time. But I could just see so many gaps and so many needs. They often have accountants who don't do anything like what you guys are doing. Their accountants, put the numbers in the boxes, give them their year end, and off they go. So there's very little planning, very little strategy. And as I got further down the financial planning role, I realized that was something that I could sort of nudge and encourage and ask questions and get them thinking about, life insurance as a tool, or making sure that their employees were taken care of, considering disability, things like that, but as well as in retirement planning and planning for the future, which I think small business owners are not necessarily superb at sometimes. And then in my connection with Rob, and just looking at what he does and seeing how well they steward a company toward really maximizing their exit and making sure they don't work for 30 years and then fold up because there's no market for them. It encouraged me to get a little bit more expertise in that as well, and just be able to more nudge and ask questions and direct to the responsible experts who can lead them into a path of success beyond what they would just find on their own. So that's, I think, how I create value. I go way beyond just the group benefits side, obviously working in my sphere, but connecting with excellent advisors outside of that. Like building a team for these guys is really my heart. I've mostly come into an existing business, and it'll be anywhere from a startup to somebody who's talking about retirement. So I'm in the full life cycle, just depending on where I find them. I don't usually come in when they sell the company, because usually I'm kind of attached to it and I go with them. But I would say working with that small business owner who this is his baby and he built it, that's sort of where I find myself in the life cycle. My key differentiator, I would say, because I'm independent, I stole this from someone else, but I call myself a product mercenary. So I am very agnostic. I want to find the right thing for the right person at the right time. I don't have any loyalty outside of to my client. And I tend to build quite personal relationships because I end up really enjoying my clients and their families. So I think that would sum it up.
Awesome. Excellent. Product mercenary. That's a really bad way to talk about your business in front of another insurance advisor.
I'm not loyal to the insurance companies. I'm loyal to my clients.
No, I get it. I know you well enough. Well, thank
I
you very
know.
much, everybody. That was good insight.
So what I'd like to do is just kind of go around and take turns with everyone around where are you seeing needs with your clients? Like, what I'd like to do is ask each person, have you had a situation in the last year where your client, have you had an exit discussion with your client, and where have there been holes for your client in terms of help? So do you want to go back and start with Brian? Brian? Have you had this conversation with any clients, and where have been the holes?
Well, there's a few people who've wanted to set up trusts, etc., for future planning.
Mm-hmm.
How do they successfully transform, get the assets in the hands of their heirs? The other thing is, more like Alvin is doing. I know one company that really needs a big turnaround effort, and they used to be very large company in terms of top end. They were over 500,000, but they've slipped below the 500,000 now. So I think they could easily get back up there. They just need a little bit of help. They need someone to coach a quarterback, someone just come in and say, okay, this is dysfunctional, here's what we're doing. So those are two things that I can kind of share.
So is it kind of almost around corporate restructuring, or?
I would say restructuring, and probably a lot of reinforcement or enforcement of just internal things. Like the captain of the ship is kind of just given up and is not really doing too much anymore. And he's not that old. Like, he's, I think, 49 years old. So he's either just lost interest, or he's just kind of thrown his hands up in the air. So I think he does need an external help. He needs kind of like the hatchet man, or somebody to come in and just crack the whip and really kind of get things going back on track, because it was a very successful company for a while, and it's just kind of falling apart.
Well, it's funny because, and again, if anyone's got any other ideas, examples, compliments, etc., to when anyone shares, please just pipe up. Robert and I have one client, and they've basically handed us their leadership team. And kind of said, I've tried getting them to, step up and lead instead of me, and here, see if you guys can do it. And it's actually kind of funny.
Yeah,
But it's
if
working.
I can.
But it's working.
Yeah, he's thrilled because we've been able to do what he couldn't. And a lot of times, I find a lot of business owners, they're like parents, and our kids have trained us to be dependent on them. Why should they think when they can reverse delegate and get us to do all the thinking for them? And I find a lot of us do that with our kids, and a lot of us business owners do that with our staff.
Awesome.
One of the things I found was in the companies I've turned around and the ones that I advise now, they started off with the intent to sell, but once value got going and created, they changed their mind. And the distinction in that statement arises from them getting back to being creative. And we use these terms so loosely. You have to learn to delegate. Well, what does that mean? Delegate is only a residue. It's not an action. And quite frankly, delegation is just giving yourself the freedom to be creative, as opposed to handing work off. And that's the number one objective of the executive and the CEO, is to get back to being creative. We had a company in India that said, I got a 5-year plan to build a business. I said, well, I've got a company doing mid-mile and last mile logistics in Africa and Canada. Why don't we join forces with them and build a business that way? He said, I never would have thought of that. And lo and behold, we've got a success story. So it's about getting them back to being creative. It's a very interesting dynamic.
Cool. Anyone else?
Awesome.
Vanessa? What do you seen any holes with your clients? Have you had the conversation in the last year?
Yeah, so I did. I took over a client from another accountant, and the first thing this client did was call me and say, I think I have a buyer. I want to sell my business. And I knew nothing about the business at that point because I had there was a small book of business that I took over from somebody who, from another practitioner who had health concerns. So I had to learn what the business about, but the business was not in any condition to sell. There was everything from significant debt accumulation over the past year to operations that are, I would say, less than efficient. You have $2 million of sales with sort of an average product price of $25 per product, and no online platform for people to order. Everything going through a phone conversation or an email or a fax or something like that. This is not what I call a success story, because the business owner was not amenable to the conversation about making any changes. 55 years old, had inherited the business from his father-in-law in 1993. And it had kind of just run along on its own, and he didn't really have to put in a lot of elbow grease into the strategizing for it. Relied a lot on relationships, like friendships with people who are now retiring out of the marketplace. And so I question whether I approached it in the right way, because I can usually convince my clients to do what's good for them. And this one kind of stings a little, and I you know, without knowing the individual, I mean, it's difficult for that. But if anybody has an idea of how I may have, you know, convinced him, I tried to connect him with a couple people, and just unwilling to change, just wants to ride this out. The sale didn't happen, obviously. It wasn't going to transact for near the value that this fellow, like this fellow thought that it was around 500,000, but I mean, the best valuation I could come out of it was maybe 150.
So isn't that in itself an answer to the, how do you get them to do something different? If you want more value, you got to do something different.
Yeah, and I can use all those statements and argue in the discussion, but it just didn't fly in this case. It was just somebody who maybe you guys have come across this. I have just so rarely come across it in my practice and in my environment, where you come to it with lots of thought, lots of good ideas, and had such a just an unwillingness to change, yet still the desire to want to sell. And I'm at a bit of a loss on that one.
Yeah, it's a little bit disconcerting because there's a disconnect there. If you want to sell, you have to do something different. But if you're not willing to do something different, it's going to be difficult to sell, right? So
tell me this, do you encounter this? Like, one of the thoughts I had in this is that maybe, I've had some very exceptional clients in my past, and I keep learning about that. I really did have an exceptional client base in the practice that I sold in 2018. And now maybe what I'm getting the experience of is sort of more the average, and that when a business is struggling, when the business owner is struggling to have motivation in the business, that maybe that is a time when they want to sell, and it's not the best time to sell. Would that be an accurate statement, Brad? And I need a wake up call, perhaps, to reality, because I think I've worn rose-colored glasses.
Well, actually, we find Robert, we fire a lot of clients because, again, our opinion is one thing. So one of the tools we use is we'll use assessment tools, exit readiness assessment, exit attractiveness assessment, and the tool itself, hey, it's not me. The tool says.
Yeah, so it's not
Well,
opinion,
snowball's
you've got
open house.
fact. Yeah.
But that being said, even if we can convince them to kind of go along with it, if we're pushing on a rope, it's when it comes time to actually take action. And if they will not take action, then we're at the point where we fire them, because at that point they're not coachable. And I'm not going to stay around and destroy my reputation on somebody who's just not willing to make the changes that, no change, no results. I'm sorry.
In another case, I've got two other businesses. One's just transitioning to the daughter, and both dad and daughter are extremely committed to keeping this business effective. They're doing all the right things with that one. I'm really enjoying the work with them. That one, we don't need a lot of third-party people because they just have a lot of expertise themselves. And then I've had another business that they had engaged somebody like yourself, Brad, just at the same time they'd engaged me to be their year-end accountant, and they've been making this transition, and again, well advised, well documented, good contracts, lots of clarity. The clarity comes because they've had lots of dialogue about how this is going to work, and that's what I love about bringing in the professionals, is not because we end up with a final agreement in the end, but because the discussion that went behind it has lent itself to everybody having a lot of good thought in how this works well for everyone, and that they come to agreement, and nobody feels forced into a situation, or and so that one has gone really well, and I again really enjoy working with the business owners.
Okay, we're going to need to wrap it up here, but Phil, you had a question?
Yeah, just a quick comment. While Vanessa was talking, I was thinking of the number of clients that I've met who they got their business through the pandemic mostly by slashing and cutting costs, and came out the other end with sort of skeleton staff. Most of them have no salespeople left, and now they're contacting me because they want to sell their business and they don't have a sales team, and they want to fix it all immediately and don't want to spend any more money. Right? It's a challenge, and I'm fortunate I haven't had to fire them because I never brought them on in the first place. But and there's so many solopreneurs out there who probably should have thought about things 10 years ago when things were good, and are now in a pretty bad spot, because there really is nothing to sell unless you can sell their address book or whatever. So I agree with Vanessa. It's a tough world out there for a lot of companies, but there are still a lot of, I like working with new companies who are in growth mode, are investing in their business, and are thinking ahead intelligently to not being in that business forever. In many cases, it's not their first business, it's their second or third, and they're experienced to know what they're doing. So I don't try and be a fractional CFO or a fractional COO. So I wish people would stop trying to be fractional CROs. I get referred, and some nice ones from CFOs, who, well, I've tried everything to grow sales. Well, just telling the salespeople to go sell more probably wasn't going to do it. So I'm happy that they do eventually bring me in, but things can happen faster if everybody doesn't try to do what they aren't necessarily the most skilled at. Because I'll never try and do your taxes, I promise.
Excellent.
And believe me, you don't want me to be doing your sales.
Good. In terms of today, everyone, there's 3 dots in the chat. It has an option that says save chat, and it will allow you to actually download. So if everyone's put their contact information in there, then you should be able to grab it and have it for your own records.
Thanks, guys. That was great.
Awesome. All right. Good seeing everybody. Look
Nice
forward to
meeting
seeing
you.
you again.
Yeah,
Thanks
we're
for
doing this
organizing
every
this.
month, so let's stay connected.
Merry
Robert,
Christmas.
that mustache is looking really good.
You're doing
Thanks,
this
buddy.
again next month, Brad?
Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we're going to be running this. We're actually running one in person, face to face, at Hudson's, and then the following week, each month, we're going to be doing the virtual ones for people who can't make it face to face.
So when is the next one?
The next one, I think I have it in my footer. So the next one is January.
The first Thursday, right?
The face-to-face one is the first Thursday at Hudson's.
Yeah.
And then the virtual
That'll be
one.
the 5th.
The 5th. Yep, absolutely. Yep.
So that'll be the next face-to-face one.
Good. Excellent. Nice to meet you all,
Yep.
and look forward to connecting afterward.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Okay.